Now, President Trump was having a bit of a meltdown on Twitter over being fact checked by his favorite medium. Now, the tweets in question had to do, of course, with his feud with mail in ballots, the same kind of mail in ballots, by the way, that he has used himself, as well as his spokesperson, Kayleigh McEnany. All of them have used mail in or absentee ballots at some point. So, yeah. Now, let me read his tweets because they're fun. He says, "There's no way, zero, that mail in ballots will be anything less than substantially fraudulent. Mailboxes will be robbed." That's funny. Ballots will be forged and even illegally printed out and fraudulently signed. The governor of California is sending ballots to millions of people. Anyone living in the state, no matter who they are or how they got there, will get one. That's obviously not true. All of that, of course, is complete and utter garbage. But continuing, he said that will be followed up with professionals telling all of these people, many of whom have never been thought of voting before, how and for whom to vote. This will be a rigged election. No way. Okay. Fun times. Fun times. All right. Anyway, so he does know that 34 states allow for mail-in ballots, right? Or no excuse absentee ballots, right? No, of course he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't know that 34 states, but he does know that in Florida they do allow those. So, okay, well, you can cast an absentee ballot, which again I mentioned he did. I mean, what do you expect? The president to travel all the way to his home state to go in to cast a ballot? I mean, what are you, crazy? No, actually, that would be great. Yeah, that's fine. It's also fine when our troops do it. So why isn't it fine that everybody else gets to do it? Oh, it's because he doesn't want other people to do it. It's funny that the same people that are defending him on this, right, and say, yeah, voter fraud, voter fraud. They're the same kind of people without any sense of irony that are defending him, right, about allowing anyone else to mail in their ballots. They're the ones that are complaining about this. So the problem is, of course, mail-in ballots promote one thing: allowing everyone to vote. It promotes widespread voting, not fraud. Statistically, you're actually more likely to be struck by lightning than do mail-in voter fraud. It's just a fact, right? Facts don't care about your feelings. And the facts are, of course, that it's very, very rare to experience or to actually do mail-in voting, mail-in voter fraud, right? And all the states that actually do allow mail-in voting or absentee voting. Insane. Okay, anyway. So now the amount of voter fraud, like I said, extremely, extremely tiny. But here's the thing: the problem that Trump runs into, and the Republicans, is why they hate this so much, is that there will be more voting as a result. And they believe that since they're so unpopular, that they will lose if there are more people that vote. In fact, remember when Trump had said this?
I will tell you this. If you look at before and after, the things they had in there were crazy. They had things, levels of voting that if you ever agreed to it, you'd never have a Republican elected in this country again. They had things in there about, election days and what you do and all sorts of clawbacks. And they had things that were just totally crazy.
Totally crazy. Look, that's the reason he hates mail-in ballots. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise, because it's a lie. Truth is, Republicans do worse when more people vote. Currently, at least, because right now their current policy positions are incredibly unpopular. And that's what it is, because their policy positions basically exist to give more money to the rich and to corporations. So now, after these tweets, of course, Twitter decides to do something they've never done before and probably never believed and never believed that they would have to do, and they would actually fact check the president. So under his tweet, there's a section labeled "What You Need to Know." Now, here's what it reads, right? Trump falsely claimed that mail-in ballots would lead to a rigged election. However, fact checkers say that there's no evidence that mail-in ballots are linked to voter fraud. Trump falsely claimed that California will send in mail-in ballots to anyone living in the state, no matter who they are, who they got, or how they got there. In fact, only registered voters will receive ballots. 5 states already vote entirely by mail, and all states offer some form of mail-in absentee voting, according to NBC News. So that's the fact check, right? That's what Donald Trump is getting all butthurt about. So in response, here's what he said. Republicans feel that social media platforms totally silence conservative voices. We will strongly regulate or close them down before we can ever allow this to happen. We're going to regulate social media companies. Really? Look, hey, Republicans feel that they're being unfair. They feel. Hey, whatever happened to facts don't care about your feelings? No, social media. Look, here's the truth. Social media companies, they're giant corporations. They love the right wing. They bend over backwards to service right wingers. Twitter refuses to ban white supremacists because if they did, and white supremacist content, well, if they did, they would end up banning a lot of Republican congressmen, a lot of top conservatives on Twitter. So Jack Dorsey, he didn't want to do that because he looks at a lot of people. And by the way, Jack Dorsey, I believe he's been to the White House before. So understand, he's not some raging leftist, right? No, Jack Dorsey runs a corporation, and that corporation, of course, like all corporations, they want to make money, right? And so they want to appeal to the widest user base. But at some point, they also have to enforce some sort of standards, right? And so here's what they did. They drew the line at massive lies. But let's not pretend that this is a principled stand by these companies. No, if they can find a way to use this against leftists, they totally will. Because these companies they're generally not threatened by conservatives, right? Yes, of course, their advertisers are like, hey, these guys are a little too out there. Maybe like put a damper on them, kind of stop them a little bit here, because again, that makes them lose money, right? Especially when they put together like ridiculous conspiracy theories and they spread them around using these platforms. But look, let's be honest. These companies, they're threatened by the left. Why? It's because we challenge corporate power and we challenge censorship. And so I'm glad that people are not being censored on Twitter, or actually there are cases definitely of left-wing accounts being censored on Twitter as well as right-wing accounts. And so I'm against that, right? But in this case, I'd rather them fact check than censor. I would prefer that fact check. But let's be honest, I'm much more comfortable with a neutral party that is doing these fact checks. Like, for example, you have on Facebook, you've got like the Daily Caller doing fact checks on posts. That's ridiculous. They're definitely not a neutral party. CNN and NBC, they're also not a neutral party on this. And so I would rather somebody who is actually a neutral party that is interested in facts to be able to do that other than another gigantic corporate cable network. But that's a more nuanced discussion, of course, right? But overall, I'm actually happy that they did this because, let's be honest, Donald Trump's 100% wrong on this. And people do need to know that. Not that it convinces anybody who's a MAGA guy. So one more here. He said on Twitter, just like we can't let large-scale mail-in ballots take root in our country, it would be a free-for-all for cheating, forgery, and theft of ballots. Whoever cheated the most would win. Likewise, social media, clean up your act now. Look, now on the issue of regulating social media, I actually do agree that we should. But we should go further than that, actually. I think these companies shouldn't be companies at all. I think social media should be a public utility. Facebook, public utility. YouTube, public utility, right? All these different social media platforms. They're platforms. They should be a public utility, regulated by an independent commission that is free of politics. Why? Because there's so much communication and so much dissemination of information that is being done on social media now that it should be a public good and independently regulated. So I don't like the idea of putting a private corporation as a gatekeeper for information and facts. I don't like that. I don't like that. But understand that that's different from what Donald Trump is proposing, right? When he says, oh, we should regulate them. No, he wants it to be more like state media. He wants it to be more like, no, you agree with everything that I say because I'm right, you're fake news. Well, obviously, I don't agree with that because that's not independent. That's not non-biased. That's not putting facts, and truth forward like you should be, right? No, it's him trying to put out his own propaganda. And that's the problem here. So understand that there are different goals at play. With anything, when it comes to Donald Trump, he wants to make sure that it serves his interests and himself and not the truth. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.